Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking a bit about an article that I released on TDB last year called the Bulang-ish report, where I drank through a bunch of Bulang teas. This is not quite as big as my Iwu report where it was over 100 teas. Bulang is also a relatively small area compared to kind of what we think of as the Six Famous Mountains, which was what was featured there. This drink through was also quite enjoyable. The drink through the goal of it was basically to kind of continue to establish my feel for these different teas, kind of revisit some old favorites, as well as try a couple new teas, so things like the Nanqiao that stood out and whatnot. And one tea that has been probably the most famous Bulang tea in kind of the Western sphere, so again, we're talking about a niche of a niche here, is the Bulang Double Lions 502. We can thank Pedro, and we can thank these teas we like for really popularizing that. That's the tea that I will be drinking here. And it's a tea that has, kind of gradually gone up in my estimations. Originally, when I had it, 2018, 2019, you can look up an old episode. It was a very, very strong tea. And I don't think at the time I fully appreciated it. Coming into this report, comparing it with a lot of similar-ish teas, my respect for it has definitely probably been about as high as it's ever been. My opinion for a while was that it was just a bit expensive in it, and by no means is it a cheap tea now, but I do kind of understand the appeal. So 2005, when it was made, very particular time in kind of the poor landscape, where you kind of have a lot of these boutiques are just starting up. So things like the Taiwanese boutiques like Chen Yuan Hao, Yangqing Hao, and they're very much focused on kind of the eastern part of Xishuangbanna, which is the Yiwu Six Famous Mountains part. So you don't get quite as much crossover over into this area. Eventually that would change and people would press like private, smaller productions of like, I don't know, Laobanjiang or some of these different villages in western Xishuangbanna. But for the most part, this is kind of like big factory land. So you have Menghai Tea Factory productions, and to a lesser scale, you have things like Nanqiao productions, which, specified Bulang. And these are some of the earliest productions that you'll see Bulang specified. There are a couple of dyes that are the same year or a year before or a year after that are also specifically Bulang. And so I think it's in this sense that the Double Lion really stands out as being like just a very, very potent tea compared to those. One thing that you're going to also note when it comes to kind of the Bulang terroir is just kind of that conversion of bitter to sweet, something that's also very noticeable in a lot of classic Menghai Tea Factory productions as well. And so what you want is there might be a fair bit of bitterness, but it will often convert very, very quickly to sweetness. So it's important to pay attention to how it lingers in your mouth and whatnot. The aftertaste is very kind of a bit different than kind of what we're talking about when it comes to sort of like the Yiwu-ish, the Six Famous Mountains areas. These are definitely teas that can pass my speed test, and I think something like the Double Lions, while it was probably a bit strong 6-7 years ago, it's now really kind of in a nice space. And I think this is a pretty solid benchmark to get. It's not the cheapest benchmark that you can get, but I think it is a very decent one if you can afford it, and it kind of gives you a nice little measuring stick to measure other productions against. So I'm going to do just a couple of steeps of this guy right now. All right, so here we go. I've actually been drinking this a little bit earlier in the day, so this is something like steep 5 or 6, but no problem. This tea, I've had it enough times to know that you can definitely get the profile pretty consistently there. It's also been well rolled, sufficiently rolled, so the extraction, it can be a little bit slower to rise. You might get peak steeps at like 3 or 4 or 5, potentially, depending on how you are brewing it. Cheers. A little bit about the Double Lions, too. It is a co-commission between Chuxiang, which I believe is a Malaysian tea house or tea production, and Dehe Xin, which is, I believe, based in the mainland. And so they did a number of these kind of Bulang, explicitly Bulang productions from 2004 to 2006. The 2005 ones, there's a 501 and a 502. 502, for whatever reason, has become the sought-after one. Well, actually, it's not for whatever reason. It's because it's thought to be more potent. 501 is actually surprisingly good. Because I'm brewing the later steeps of this is already fully opened up. It's big, it's thick, it's almost chewy in its texture. Really nice there. It's a fairly, I think compared to a Dai tea of the same year, there's a little bit less blending going on, but it still has enough that I don't feel like it loses out too much on the dynamism. It leaves a very lasting kind of protracted sweetness in the mouth and the palate, in the throat as well. So that part of it is very nice. And I would say that these steeps are not at all too overpowering at this point. Maybe if I powered through 5 or 6 really quickly, I would feel a little differently. But yeah. In fact, I'd say the bitterness is mostly tamed here. I've had a mainland stored version before, and it's definitely a little different. You can get a bit more sourness here, but this one, it's almost so thick that you need a second to process it as it goes down. Yeah, really lovely incense note. So the reason why so much of it is Malaysian stored is because of, I believe, that tea house Chuxiang, who is based in Malaysia. So you can find an unusually high amount of this tea that has been Malaysian stored. Big, thick wood incense, just really, really classic Bulang material. And the aftertaste, I think the aftertaste is the thing that most people are going to like the most. It's just very substantive in the mouth. It's potent. This is not a tea for the people that really, really like subtle teas. This is a loud, brash tea in a very pleasant way. So shout outs to Pedro, shout outs to Teas We Like for kind of bringing this tea to the forefront. Shout outs to LP, who has been responsible for a lot of the sourcing of the double lines throughout the years, as well as the place where I got some from. And I will see y'all next time. Cheers.